everyone, and welcome to Madeline Island School of the Arts webinar. We're here joined with Joe Paquet and Don Demers. My name is Annie Meach-Sumner, and I have the pleasure of hosting this webinar and spending the next hour with these highly respected plein air artists. Their work is all about capturing the beauty and the mood of the natural world in a way that feels alive and real. Welcome, Joe and Don. Thanks for being with us. We're going to start a little slideshow here. All right, Joe, we're going to start with Joe. What you're seeing right now is our campus of Madeline Island School of the Arts. Joe has been with MISA from the beginning, probably like the last 13 years. Am I right, Joe?
That is correct. Yes.
He's been with MISA since the beginning when he started, and he draws in people with his unique approach of painting outdoors feel approachable and inspiring. He teaches not just the technical side of painting, like how to use color, light, composition, but also how to connect with the landscape and capture its spirit truly. I've known Joe for many years, and he has a wonderful way of helping students see the world differently, encouraging them to slow down, observe deeply, and bring their personal experiences into their art. Not only do these students grow as artists, but as people who appreciate the beauty around them. And you can see that, Joe, in these pictures. It's just a wonderful thing to be able to see and witness in person when you're on the island. Moving on to Don. Don also has the incredible ability to capture the beauty and drama of the outdoors, especially the coastal scenes. He breaks down the complex ideas of light and atmosphere and composition into simple, practical steps that anyone can follow. He is encouraging and down to earth and makes his students feel comfortable while challenging them to improve. He is a storyteller at heart, sharing fascinating insights about the places he paints and how to bring their stories into their own work. Students say that learning from Don is as much about growing as an artist as it is about gaining a deeper appreciation for the natural world. Wow, if that doesn't sum the both of you up in a nutshell, I don't know what does. We're going to spend the next few moments here going through these beautiful works of art. Joe's going to start by showing some of his works, and he's going to have a chance to tell his story behind each of them. And then we'll move on and look at some of Don's images and let Don tell us his story behind each one of those pieces. Again, like I said, each one of these guys tells a story and they bring these pictures alive. So we're going to start, Joe, if you don't mind. We're going to bring up one of these fabulous photos of yours here, and I'll hand the mic over to you, Joe. Go ahead.
Yeah, every once in a while you have a moment when you're studying where something kind of changes your life a little bit. My first or second experience on Madeline, I was teaching, and at the end of the week, I had walked down this. My students were painting down on the water, but every once in a while I would take the long road, this path here, and I'd go through this stand of birches, and there was something about it that was just mystical, for lack of a better word. And because I'd been there for a week, I remember towards the end of the week, it was a gray day, and I walked out, and I just remember calling my wife and saying, "Hey, if you're cool, I'm going to stay another 3 days and work on this painting." And that there's something in that forest, and well, we know from Ojibwe history there, thousands of years of Ojibwe history, there is something there, and every place has a vibe. And all I can tell you is that was my first real deep dive into that. So I spent those 3 days standing in that spot with those trees and blocking this thing in and taking it home. And there was just something about it that made me begin to pay attention on a deeper level. And after that, I did I don't know, 4, 5, 6, maybe more even, forest interiors. I hadn't done one in 20 years. And that was the first one in 20 years. It's called A Gentle Indifference. And the title comes from Albert Camus' book, because the forest is very indifferent to us. And I think that's a very healthy place for any of us to reside. There's such self-importance today and self-aggrandizement. And I think when you are firmly planted in a space over a period of time, the next slide that you showed, I spent 5 days in that particular spot. And what happened with each successive day is my senses began to heighten. And I, as an outdoor painter, I probably arrogantly consider myself pretty sensitive to the world. And then I realized just how far away I was from that, because after day one, I started to, because you're panicked and you're setting up and you're drawing, you're trying to freeze an effective light, and there's mayhem and there's green light shining on your canvas. And anyway, I calmed down by day two. I'm getting my drawing down and I'm starting to block in all my shadows. And all of a sudden I say, what is that amazing fragrance? And what it was the wind blowing off the lake. And it was that cool, fresh, the smell of cool, fresh water blowing over warm vegetation. And it was like ambrosial. And then in day three, all of a sudden I realized the moss under my feet, because I'd been standing in the same place. So by day five, I was practically feral. I mean, I was so absolutely connected to the place. And I think that's kind of the essence for me, or the apogee, the high point that any of us can get to as outdoor painters, is to connect in a way where we become outside of ourselves or beside ourselves. And we have that continuous energy loop between you and your subject. There's a give and a take. It's not about you putting your stamp on it. It's about you filtering it through you and your sensibility. And it becomes a collaboration at its best, I guess I'd say. That was one of the little farms left near the school, which is now gone. We were able to, I was able to do my demos there for 3 years and have the class there. And there's still some remnants of the Great North, I guess you would call it, up there on the island. And I'm sure Don could attest to this in Maine. Those little shreds of the past are disappearing very quickly. And it was my hope in the time that I've been on the island to try to capture some of its history a little bit and to hold on to a little bit of that. And that had that thing to it, that shed that basically had been bowed to the land over years, and heavy snows and all of that good stuff, on the rooftop. And so it's rarely about subject for me. It's about spirit of place, I guess is the best way I could say it without being corny. And being quiet enough and taking the time to be quiet enough to let the spirit of that place kind of move through you. And this was a demo. This was one of the demos I did for my class.
Joe, when you're teaching a demo with your class, what is it like? Is it just quiet? Are people talking?
Well, at its best, it's quiet.
But I'm asking you, do you require people to just be in the moment?
I try to, but it's hard for people to sit still, for 2.5 hours. And people, especially most of the students that I have are, retired professionals of one kind or another, and they're expediters. They're used to getting stuff done, chop, chop, let's hop. And so, I'm just like, guys, I know this is going to be hard. I'll take breaks every 20 minutes, but please just be quiet. Hold your questions until I take the break. And because, watching a demo is like watching grass grow. It takes time. And so, that's the one thing I always ask of the students is just bear with me and stay patient, and I'll explain everything. And then I'll show you how it all comes together. That painting that's on my back, and that was I was up on the island during COVID, and Charlie Meach said, "Why don't you come up and avail yourself of the place since we have no classes?" And I brought up some very large canvases and just spent days, kind of working in the forest there.
What a dream!
That's Cape Cod. Donald recognized that. That's Chatham, as I can't say the proper accent with it, Chatham, but it's
That place
well,
is still there. You know that, Joe.
yes, that it's the flotsam that washed up. One of the lifeguards told me after one of the big hurricanes, and a bunch of the people turned it into this little, shack, and oh my God, it was so cool. And again, spirit of place, man. The Cape has it's got that bright light, white, yellow light. And you think about that versus those forest interiors and just how truly different they are. And so I tried the best I can when I do these things to get out of my own way, to divest myself of preconceptions. And I try to help my students do that too, to have some guidelines and have some really good, solid things to go after and work on, and a plan, but at the same time being willing to abandon that plan if you have to get to something else, to be surprised when you go someplace. And so after 40 some years of painting outdoors, I could say I'm getting closer to having the eyes that I did when I was a child, with every year, to get out of my own way and just let the beauty and the power of place inform my hand. And so I felt like that was one of those places where I was able to really kind of hit on what I was feeling when I was looking at it.
Let's see. Do we have any other pictures here? I think that was the last one, Joe.
All right, we're good.
Thank you. I love those pictures. Joe, I had a question from Neil. He said, have you ever camped out and painted, and how was the experience? Did you learn any tips about camping and painting?
I have, and I don't like it.
Why not?
Why? Because you know what? Painting takes so much energy for me to be so fully present.
Yeah.
A good night's sleep without sand in my sleeping bag is really, really nice. White sheets and a cold martini after dinner, and I'm ready for the next day. So I think it's a great thing for people who enjoy it. But for me, I don't mind camping, but not while I'm painting. No.
That's wonderfully said. And you'll take a hot cup of coffee though, any day.
Any day, anytime. Yes.
Exactly. Okay. Thanks so much for your time, Joe. Let me just remind everyone before I go in and introduce Don and we look at some of Don's work, just to give everyone an idea. I didn't explain this in the beginning. Joe and Don, obviously masters at their craft, are going to be joining us on Madeline Island, if you don't already know, this August 18th to the 22nd. And the wonderful thing about these two is that they're coming together and collaborating on this magical island. Don for his coastal, vibrant water scenes, and Joe obviously for these fabulous, spirited, ever-evolving forest scenes that sort of speak to him. It's going to be a 5-day surf and turf. Whoever came up with that fabulous title, kudos to you, because it's going to be an incredible 5 days working with these masters. Don, we're going to move on to your slideshow. Let me just have Allie's going to pick it up here. And here we have it. Let's see, Don, as we're going through. Also, just to remind everyone, this webinar is being recorded and we will share it with everyone. So if something comes up and you do have to leave us, absolutely don't hesitate. We will get the recording to you. All right, Don, let's pass it over to you.
Well, hello, and thank you to the school for inviting me, and a sincere and deep thanks to my friend and colleague, Mr. Joe Paquet, for inviting me to participate in this event that we're going to have. It's an honor, a privilege. I know those are all platitudes, but they're true. I'm very humbled and grateful for the opportunity to be associated with the school, then hanging out with my buddy and one of my painting heroes. So thanks for that. You want me to talk about this picture? Oh, now I can't hear you.
Absolutely, Don. Yes, take it away.
Okay.
Where was this?
This is, well, it's half Monhegan, half Acadia National Park, Otter Point. and then highly interpreted with my imagination. And to give respect and acknowledgement of Joe's comments, he's already said much of what I would say about process and about the role that I hope that I play as a painter of the natural world and the human built world as well. So specifically about this picture, one of the things I do is watercolor studies on location, and from those watercolor studies, I create oil paintings. And the reason I change medium is so I'm not repeating myself. And so the experience is, it continues to be a creation, not a recreation. So then I'm forced to use visual memory. I know I've got to heighten my skills of observation when I'm there. So it puts an urgency and an intensity in my visit to the location. This painting was then crafted back in the studio. Of course, the kinetic nature of the sea, the damn thing won't stop. So I have to have an archetypal understanding of its energy and its anatomy. So I did 2 or 3 studies on location with a changing weather system, which is always exciting to paint, but always difficult to paint in. And then I ruminate over it, and back in the studio, I crafted this painting. So if you were to go to the site with this painting under your arm, you'd say, oh, well, I can recognize the promontory. I can recognize the general profiles of the land, but there are a lot of differences. And it's because I'm slowly learning this over the years. I've become less dedicated to the facts and more dedicated to the spirit and the essence. There's a deeper truth. Joe, you could help me out. I can't remember Socrates or Aristotle, but there was a parable or a writing about how there's a greater truth than what the facts present. The beauty of a rose goes beyond what the rose looks like. And that's really the kind of thing that I'm after in my paintings. This picture, Breaking in the Light, it's from my imagination after hours and, well, days, years, my life of studying the sea, sitting by the shore, just watching it. I don't use photography for the most part. Occasionally I do. When I was an illustrator, I used it all the time. So this is an amalgam of observations, watching the geometry of the light breaking through, the changing color, the spin drift. And I have been intrigued by painting the sea this way from the time I was a young kid, but an early influence is E. John Robinson, an Oregon painter, a Northwest painter. I studied him. And then Frederick Waugh, of course, Frederick Judd Waugh was. And if you read the writings of his process, there's something much truer in the manifestation of the subject matter if you use absorption, as Joe spoke of the absorption of the forest. The subject matter will reveal itself if you dedicate yourself to it. The more you put in, the more you get back. My painting philosophy I found on the side of a beer can, it said no deposit, no return. So if you don't invest yourself in the work, then I can move through these quite quickly. This painting was done entirely on location. It was actually a demo for a class down in Rhode Island, which is a hidden gem of a place to paint, by the way. It's the diversity of subject matter down there. So this painting is rough, unrefined, but again, not going for the refinement, not going for the finesse, but going for the spirit and the scale,
beautiful
energy of the scene. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate that. So early in my career, I had a tendency to over caress and to, again, repeat myself, refine the work too much. And what happened was I would smother the spirit of the piece. This is off of Lobster Cove down in Monhegan, again, on location. I've got slides in this of these paintings that are not perfect, and this is one of them. The energy of the scene is what I was after. The enormity, the concussion of the water hitting the shore is what I was after. But if you look at these 2 rock promontories, they're too symmetrical with that piece sliding down in the middle. So this was not perfectly artistically orchestrated on location. I don't care about that all the time. I'm just trying to get to the truth of the scene in its veracity. A little redundant there, and then later I would analyze the work artistically, in terms of composition, space allocation, the whole criteria that we need to use in a studio. So the energy color here, that's the information I gleaned from that experience. And by the way, you could feel the ground rumbling under your feet. Those were about 15-foot waves. So, yeah, big stuff. This is where my my little summer cabin is, a place called Ocean Point. And the Grimes Cove is the location, bright, crystalline morning. And this is, I really appreciate Joe's comments, because at my best, I'm a heart and a head and a set of hands. And I want to be an artistic receptor to the world and develop a communion and a relationship with my subject matter and be true to the subject. I'm going to show up anyway because I'm the one making the picture. So my devotion and the requisite to that, and one of the things that I know all workshop instructors teach, is facility with your craft, having the requisite skill so that when you show up, you've got the ability to tell this story of nature. So to me, there's just so much to chew on in a scene like this. The textural diversity, obviously the sense of light is a great motivator. The time of day is enormous to me. And immersing myself, connecting with the subject of a place that I love. I've known this spot since I was 8 years old.
But it feels like that painting. It feels like that.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
I appreciate that very much.
Sorry to interject.
No. I actually, I wish I had said a few things while we were looking at your painting. So I'm going to be reiterating a little bit or commenting on your narrative to your paintings. This again, the same peninsula. Brooks Newbert was the occupant of this cabin when I was growing up. And overcast day, there's a coming fog. I painted this with some brevity, with some speed, trying to capture the lupin. And the theme is a bit repetitious, but it's just simply being devoted to this place that I've known since I was a boy. I know a lot of plein air painting gets instructed with optics only. This is how you construct a picture, because a picture does have to be constructed. So you have to learn the mechanics and the techniques and all the anatomy, the constructs of putting a painting together. The other kind of painting, or one of the other kind of paintings, a deeper kind of painting, would be the likes of Andrew Wyeth. And I know Joe Paquet is of the same camp, even though he doesn't like to go camping. In that you find a deeper truth in the work if you immerse yourself in it. And the painting is just the delivery system to a much more important human experience. Again, stuck on that peninsula. By the way, when I was in my teens, I would walk around Ocean Point and come back a couple hours later and say, I can't find anything to paint. It's because I was motif chasing. And when I stopped motif chasing and realized that painting, there's a motif, that lighthouse. But I don't care. Somebody asked me a couple of weeks ago, like, do you think it's legitimate to paint a lighthouse? I said, heck yeah. Why don't you go?
If you love it.
If you love it. And if you find the truth in the thing, this goes back to sacred geometry and proportion and shape and the austerity of the New England coast. So I don't shy away from painting anything except perhaps kittens with a ball of yarn. So I'm always after, nothing will escape my interest. I don't care how cliche others might find it. As Joe well knows, painting temperature, painting heat, we can obviously see a painting, but can you feel it? Can you hear it? Can you smell it? So this painting was about that steamy August heat on this marsh along the York River. And of course, then you employ color relationships, complementary colors to activate. And I try to be very, very devoted to the natural world in my paintings. Then you have artistic themes that you can enhance, you can spread out, you can push a little bit to try to draw out those other senses, the senses that aren't present in a painting. I do a lot of.
Don, can I interrupt I just had a quick question for you. You had
You are
mentioned
not the
earlier
first person who's ever said, can I interrupt you?
you had mentioned you do a watercolor study first. Do you do that?
Not all the time.
Not all the time? Okay.
Yep. Anything else?
No, I was just, I had a student asking, when you do the watercolor study, what paper do you like best doing?
I'm not that creative with it. I use Arches cold press, 140
Yeah.
pound. And I often travel with a watercolor block just for the ease of it.
Yeah.
And I've tried Fabriano. I couldn't list the number of brands I've tried, and Arches cold press suits me. Uh, these want to always remind my students that not have one set time frame by which they work. Open up your approaches to painting outdoors. Joe mentioning that telling his students to slow down. I could not be a stronger proponent of that. Don't have this expectation that you're going to go out and create a 9x12 or an 11x14 painting every day. That's not how this works.
Don't try to finish it.
Don't try
Just try to work a harmony.
Yes,
I mean, the harmony is what makes the day, not
Yeah.
finish. You know.
Yeah, there's reactive and proactive components to painting. Reactive is being outside. Proactive is ruminating and considering later on. And I was waiting for a table at an outdoor restaurant when I painted this picture. And
Must have been a long wait.
yeah, it was high season, Joe.
Yeah. Hope the crab cakes were worth it.
All those people from down south of us came. This was a walk home from Grimes Cove, and I had a full day of painting, and these lights clicked on in the cabins, and I'm always a sucker for this. I can't help myself, that coziness in a coastal cabin. And to speak of harmony, that light glowing behind the building and then the warm incandescent light within the building. So this is a 10x8. And I said, well, I can't leave this here. I gotta grab this. So I set up quickly and tried to capture. And I'm also a huge fan, although we all repeat ourselves. Musicians do, writers do, painters do. So I've got particular themes that I'm fond of, and one of them is backlit, along with that warmth, and then the indirect light from the zenith of the sky, giving those cool tones to the other plane. I just find it so enchanting and intriguing, and I also love the feeling of the temperature changing on my body from the heat of the day to the cool of the night. Feeling that experience as things start to get a little bit chilly is really evocative to me.
Oh, wow.
So I did this on location, and this is up in Port Clyde, and just that boat wasn't working for a few days. I met the three brothers, all lobstermen. One of the three was the most fascinating. He had lost an arm in a snowmobiling accident, and he still hauled lobsters. And they are rugged guys. And this was one of their older boats that they did some trawling in when they weren't lobstering. So I asked them, went down to the dock and said, how long are you going to be sitting here? He said, we're not going to fish it for a couple of days. I said, good. I can't do a painting like this in one session. So this was 2 sessions going back. And when the fog sets in, it gives you a pretty good window. Looking back at these pictures and then hearing Joe's comments as well, I'm always reminded that they're wonderful journals to our lives. There's a story associated with every one of these images, and the absorption of time that it takes and the attention it requires to stand there for 3 to 6 to 12, however many hours Joe and I and other painters spend at a particular spot. Your familiarity, it's like getting to know someone, your relationship builds. And then all of the anecdotal components that go along with it, like meeting these lobstermen and have them come down and comment on my artistry in a, as Joe said, a colloquial and rather colorful way. And this one fella, he said, I've seen a lot of paintings of my boat, but by God, this is the best one I've seen yet. And so
And he was dead serious. I mean, it's absolutely incredible.
Well,
Boats are not easy.
no, they take some study. It's they are simpler than many people make them out to be, but they're a combination of compound curves and straight lines. So you got to pay attention to that stuff.
You hit it right on. And the water and the reflection, it's just incredible.
Well, thanks. That's an observational. That's the result of a lot of dedicated observation of the
You know,
subject.
looking at your images, Don and Joe, you know, when you look at Joe's images in the forest, you can feel the dampness, you can
Yeah.
feel the shade, you can feel the breeze, and here, just like as you said, the heat and the hazy summer. You can feel that in yours as well, Don. It's just you guys have such a way of, what was it that you said, Joe? It was the spirit.
Yeah, I think letting the spirit of a place filter through you, getting it.
Spirit of
It's
place.
it's you have to let your ego go away, and I
Mhm.
think that's it's so much of art in the last 100 years has been so ego driven. But to check your ego at the door and let nature truly. I actually never. I believe fully that nature only reveals herself to those who are humble to what's in front of them. Anyway. So, and
That's
I'm sure
wonderful.
Don feels the same way. I'm sure.
Don, you had mentioned the writings of Frederick Jude Waugh. Did
Yeah.
Frederick Jude Waugh write a book?
Well, yes and no. There's a small book by Walter Foster that has some comments and descriptions of his work. But the only thing I've ever found was a catalog, unillustrated catalog of his work. So no, he's not well published at all.
Okay, someone was asking how they find the writings of Frederick Jude Waugh.
Yeah.
Joe, these, you know, we're going through the rest of these, Don, and it just is unbelievable how the both of you just, you know, as plein air artists, you are masters in your craft, and you just have such a wonderful way of capturing the light. I mean, they don't even look like paintings, you guys.
Well, I
Is that what
appreciate.
everyone says?
Well, a lot of the comments are that looks just like looks like a picture, that looks like a photograph, and because of, yeah, of course, I think Joe would agree that our both of our works are dedicated to the reality and the truth of the scene,
Yeah.
and if you've got your observational skills are sufficient, you've got the ability to make something, quote, look real. My goal is to not have it be a picture of something, but to have it be that thing, so that the application of the paint and the process is just a mechanism by which I try to transport first myself and then a viewer to that place. Of course, we love paint. I like a duality in a painting where the paint itself has an identity without serving the illusion. So that's important to me as well. But pictures like this one,
Love that. That's
just
the one I would have bought that painting in a heartbeat if I saw it. I love that little painting. Love it.
thanks, Joe. I was with Tim Lawson painting that day, and man, was it cold. We were driving around in his pickup truck, and those are the paintings that mean the most to me because they're unadorned. There's a rawness to them that gets below the surface. This one too. Damn, was it cold in that boathouse?
It's so funny, Joe. It reminds me of the one that you have with is it the oil tanker? That one?
Uh-huh.
The winter one? I don't think we have that picture, but the way that you guys can depict the heat and then the cold, you know, I mean, it's just amazing. You both are incredibly talented at I don't know what the name of that picture is, Joe. The one that I'm talking about. Do you know where it says
I know
outline?
I've done a lot of those actually. Love an industrial landscape, but
Yes, the industrial.
I just think that the thing that I'm sure Don would agree with is you have to, if you're going to be an outdoor painter, a serious outdoor painter, that you have to become comfortable with being uncomfortable, and
Yeah.
it's in that discomfort is the friction that is necessary to feel the event. And numb comfort in the studio never helps. So discomfort actually you feel the edges of the experience so intensely that it can't help, if you're sensitive at all, to come out your fingertips.
Boy, could I agree with that. That's good timing too, by the way, because it was 108 degrees when I painted that picture.
So I have a couple questions for each of you as we go through these. But as
Yeah.
you're saying that, Joe, how do you stay true? Actually, this is for both of you. How do you guys stay true to your philosophy of deep connection with these subjects in an ever increasingly digital and fast-paced world?
Okay, I'll answer that two ways. Okay,
Okay.
I try to keep it really fast. Firstly, the problem with the digital world is that we are constantly subjecting ourselves by being watched, and we know from the famous two-slit experiment that was done with particle physics that a particle that is watched behaves differently than one that doesn't. And I think what we've lost because of everybody posting everything being so visible,
Yeah.
that the silliness of the performative nature of social media now is that there's little room left for quiet repose and organic growth. That's how I would answer that, I guess.
Ditto.
Yeah.
No,
Well, I mean, I think it's so true. Go ahead, Don.
I ignore the current world to a great extent, for precisely the reasons that Joe just mentioned. There's a great humility in being a human. There should be anyway. To if you hope to have the human experience, it doesn't come from hubris. It doesn't come from showiness. It doesn't come from immodesty. It comes from being monastic to a certain degree. And Joe would certainly attest that I'm no monk, but my interior, to some degree, I would like to think is monastic because it is quiet, it is contemplative. Thomas Merton is one of my favorite heroes, and when I've read his many books, I apply that. I attempt to apply that. I don't want to make myself sound greater than I am. I attempt to apply that to my not only my painting experience, but my living experience. And in addition to that, I think one thing that drives me kind of crazy is when paintings get relegated to the decorative arena. And I know that word decorative is somewhat relates to superficiality now. It didn't 150 years ago, but now it does to a great extent been reduced to the superficial. And what I am intrigued by about paintings is it makes people stop running, stop chasing the next image. There's been some studies done of how many images an average human see in Western culture anyway, sees in an average day. It's over 1 million images or something every time we move our eyes. So I think paintings, sculpture, all the forms of art, even reading, they give us a chance to catch our breath and to absorb the world on a much, much, much deeper level. The same way that Joe had the forest present itself to him. All right, I'm getting too wordy here. Now we're looking
I'm
at.
going to ask you guys some more questions. Joe,
Sure.
what is your process for selecting a location of paint? And how do you connect with the scene with your students before starting? And maybe again, this could be for both of you as well. So, Joe, do you want to answer first?
Sure. I think how you connect to a scene at its best, it starts emotionally. Like I'll feel a little vibration in my chest. I'm like, oh, there's something here. But that something can be different. That something can be the spirit of the place. That something can be a unique effect of light. That something can be a color harmony. That something might be a really unique subject. So I think it comes, in a lot of packages. With like I said, with the students, the biggest issue that I always have is people panicking the first couple of days of a workshop. I had a woman on Madeline in the workshop, and she was just she was in perpetual meltdown. And so I went over and I grabbed some ferns and I grabbed some spruce bough and I grabbed a bunch of these little wildflowers and I crunched it up in a ball and I put it on her easel. She goes, "What's that?" And I said, "Smell it."
Oh, wow.
She goes, "Oh my God, that's amazing." I said, "That's been around you for the last 3 days. You need to slow down. And you don't have to start painting right away. You don't have to finish a painting. This isn't, there are people that'll teach you how to make pictures, right? I can give you craft as Don can,
Mm.
but no one can inoculate you with reception. And the deeper the sensitivity, the greater the reception. The greater the reception, the more your hand will do things that you can't explain, because you are so inured, you're so connected to that thing. And if your skills are there, you move your hand in a way that water moves. I'm sure Don would attest to this. If you're painting water, it moves. You don't paint it in a static fashion and expect it to feel like it's moving. Clouds float. You know, it was what's his name? William Merritt Chase. He said, paint a cloud so a bird could fly through it and not break its neck on it, right? It's vapor. It's vapor. Those sails are on Don's painting are cloth. That water is a much heavier form of liquid. So the rock is, what kind of rock is it? Like Don says, is it granite? Is it, everything is different. The character of everything is different. So the answer for me always with the students is not, oh, what's the technique to paint this thing? That's all bullshit. That doesn't mean anything to me. Tell me how it's different. Use your words.
Mm-hmm.
Use your words. Write a paragraph about what that rock feels like when you look at it, and I guarantee you, you'll paint it completely differently. Yeah. If you're looking for a technique or you're looking for a trick, I'm certainly, you know, I'm sure Don too, but it's not fair for me to speak for Don. But that's not what I'm interested in, and that's not what I'm interested in communicating to the student. Because if I can help someone get to a point where they're continually deepening their reception, their life will get richer and richer and richer and richer. And then subject matter becomes, as Don said earlier, irrelevant, right? The famous Irish poet, what's his name? It'll come to me in a second. John O'Donoghue. He referred to it as having the graced eye. He said, the graced eye would find beauty where the ungraced eye would never linger. And our job is to find the graced eye. The only way to find the graced eye is to get lost and connect. And every sense that you connect in the dome of the experience enhances the reception within that experience. It's one of the reasons I say to the students all the time, unless you've got some vestibular disorder, and I'm not being sarcastic here, take off your headphones. Because the sound of the wind that's soughing in those trees informs that painting as much as that fragrance that you're smelling or that thing you're feeling under your feet. And all of that has little to do with picture making. It has everything to do with reception. Reception in my world is what drives picture making.
I couldn't agree more with that manifesto, if you will. It's so true. The picture making is simply a delivery system to a human experience, and the basic desire when Joe picked up crayons as a kid, and when I picked up crayons as a kid, when anybody embarks upon this journey, the two primary fundamental questions are, how do I do it, and why am I doing it? And most practitioners remain in the how do I do this, and they become technically preoccupied. And that's a blockage. That keeps you busy with learning this new tool and that tool. And now it's fun and it's necessary, but it's not the ultimate goal. The ultimate painting to me is as much experiential as it is visual. I just happen to choose visuals as my vehicle to express myself. If I were a songwriter, that would be my vehicle. But the motive of the songwriter and the motive of the visual artist is the same. It is for reception, as Joe said, and the experience is what heightens your reception. It's not a preoccupation with a technique. And there's I may regret this, but I think the majority of art instruction in our culture is one that's predicated upon technique and not the immersion. There's also this preoccupation with a short attention span and a lack of commitment and devotion. And if you go back and look at any of the art history of any of the heroes, If there's one thing that it was common with all of them, it was absorption. They didn't go someplace to paint for a long weekend like we tend to do within our culture. They went for a season. And if you, and again, I have to cite Andrew Wyeth. I know he's one of Joe's heroes too. That guy could spend a summer on a crackly beach, portraying a couple of beach stones in a broken shell or two. It's a beautiful metaphor, a beautiful vehicle for living in the present, living a full life. And your investment in your method is what will get you there, along with your humility, your dedication, your sincerity as a human being.
Well said. The two of you seem to be able to play, you seem so in sync. Obviously, you are these plein air artists, but what the two of you are saying is so deep, and such a wonderful thing for these students to understand about you. I'm sure it's much easier said than done, but you do a really wonderful job of getting people there. Can I sort of turn this in a different direction and get some people to really get to know a different side of you? I have some sort of off the cuff questions here. I'm not sure if you're ready for them or not. But I've got a couple minutes here. We've got about 10 more minutes until this is over. And again, I do want to remind people that they have been asking questions. I have some questions to ask you guys first before I get into this. Hi, Jeff says, hi, Don and Joe. Can you comment a bit about how much individualized feedback and instruction that we'll get, as well as how the time will be divided between the two of you? Maybe comment on the ratio of students to the two of you, and things like that. And how will you rotate through the workshop? Can we go through that, if that's okay?
Yeah. We've actually put some heavy thought into this already.
Wonderful.
So right now we have a kind of a rough idea for the week, but we'll always be willing to adjust for the class. Anybody that's taken a class with me knows I get around an absurd amount of times. You know this, Annie. One of the comments that comes back in the comment cards. So, and I'm sure Don is the same. Mm-hmm. So the idea is for both of us to present first both of our ideas or approaches, and then to have the students paint where we will either be in a large group where Don will start at one end and I'll start at the other, and we'll just go back and forth for the whole time, or we can break the group up into half and half, different locations, morning or afternoon. We have options, which is really nice. And we want to do one evening event for you guys. So you'll have a Q&A, like maybe Wednesday evening towards the middle of the week. And then we're thinking possibly maybe Wednesday morning, Don and I'll do we'll point opposite directions and do a demo, both of us, paintings in the same place, so that people can start out first, see how we work individually, and then what we have that is shared, and what might be different takeaways for the students. You guys will have plenty of time to paint, and then we'll finish off the week with something special. We haven't kind of figured out what that is yet, but I think students will be getting a lot of individual attention, so they don't have to worry about that. The thing is, Don's been painting, I think, longer than I have. I knew his illustration work when I was a graphic designer and an illustrator way back in the 80s. So between the two of us, there's 90 years of painting experience. I mean, it's a ridiculous wealth of richness and opportunity. So for that Wednesday night, we'll just sit down, have a glass of wine, and we'll just take questions. And it'll be a really wonderful time for people to not only relax, but get a really solid opportunity to pick our brains, both about the spirit, the craft, and maybe some of the business of it as well. Don?
Yeah, of course, I'm going to echo everything you've said, Joe, because we have discussed this multiple times now, written a rough outline or two. And that is, I wouldn't have any potential participant in this be concerned about time allocation.
About attention. Yeah.
And there's, if I dare include myself, Joe and I have an efficiency, an economy in our language. We don't muddle around. there's a directness to the way that we communicate. We have a lot in common, but we do have individual approaches. And we also discussed, Joe and I discussed, that if we ever found, our commonality will be present. Our differences will also be present, and we'll have the ability and the opportunity to articulate the differences between the two of us, so that people aren't going to walk away scratching their head saying, well, Joe said this and Don said that. That's not going to happen. It'll be a communion of ideas, not a divorce or separation of ideas. And for me personally, I know, Joe, that's been evident thus far. When I have a group of 10 to 15 students, I tell them that you're not here for a group class. I'm not going to speak to you from a lectern, except for when it's very briefly appropriate to establish a theme or a direction. So I don't give group lessons. I give 15 individual lessons under the umbrella of a couple of themes that I establish early in the week. So I know a lot of people who have attended workshops have said, well, the instructor didn't get around to see me enough. That's not going to happen. This will be the opposite. There's more likelihood that, will you get away from me for a few minutes? So we're very, very cognizant of the required balance of personal attention, solitary painting time, because we're facilitators by nature. Nobody learns to paint with somebody breathing down their neck or standing.
Well, and the week is about them. It's not about us. We're like, and I think that's a really important distinction. You know, the reason we put this thing together is every time I do a workshop, and I know Don feels the same way. How do I make this the best experience that I've ever delivered to a student? How do we do that to make it unique? And with Don's, way with understanding how water works, and really specifically, besides, you can see he can paint anything. But the point being, both of us have certain areas where we can go a little deeper with people. I just think it's going to be a really unusually rare opportunity. And that's why I'm excited about it, because we want you guys to go away changed in a really great way, to go away from this with more knowledge and more understanding and a clearer idea of whatever direction you need to take your work further.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And the benefit that will be derived from that, not to, at the risk of sounding too lofty, is it can be life-changing. There's a strong philosophy behind Joe and his work, as there is with me, and we can share that with our participants and then take them, their life will potentially be enhanced in a very strong way.
Well, hopefully it's going to be a whole lot of joy and laughing too. I mean, one of the things.
Exactly. I was going to say, there's usually a ton of laughing involved. You guys are so personable that I can't imagine, it being anything less than that. Do you guys recommend any kind of books or prerequisite reading for these artists when joining you at the workshop? Do you recommend them to do anything like that?
I just think for landscape painting, there's only a couple of books out there, and I think Don would agree with me. There's Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting. There's Burge Harrison's book on landscape painting. For me, there's not a whole lot out there. Really, more than anything else, I think it's to instead of reading, unless it's to inspire, I think that the best thing you can do is get your skills up, draw and draw and draw and draw and draw, because the biggest issue that I see is a lack of understanding of drawing, which inhibits all the subsequent steps that are necessary in a painting. And if you can do that and then just come in humble and open to receive what the week could bring you, there's no end to possibility, I think.
I certainly agree with the two publications, Joe, that you just mentioned. The dedication to the working on your skills of observation, a lot of drawing, as much as you can possibly get. Doesn't matter if it's at the kitchen table or in a parking lot, wherever you happen to be, but just look and begin to observe. Give yourself mini lessons when you're outside, just even doing errands or doing something that's rather benign in your life. say, I'm going to observe color right now, and just do mental exercises between now and then in addition to working your craft. I wish there were some, there's a couple of antiquated books. Of course, Edgar Payne is one of the standards, but it's very wordy. It's kind of tough to get through.
It's really dense.
It is, yeah. So I'd be a little bit hesitant about recommending too many books, too many of there.
I'm going to
What I
put
would,
the
I
link
will
to
add, just let
Carlton's
me,
guide to landscaping in the chat, as well as
Landscape-
Brooke Harrison's guide to landscaping.
yeah, the other thing
That
is
be
if they,
okay?
yeah, I would also add, if they're more interested in kind of what drives us, Rilke, Rainer Maria Rilke, Letters to a Young Poet, or Emerson's Self-Reliance. Both of those I reread every year because they're just rock solid for anybody that has to stand firm in a belief or go after something in a protracted fashion. I think self-awareness and building confidence to follow something, both of those things are really lovely for that.
Yeah. By the way, the Irish poet, John
O'Donoghue.
His book on beauty is magnificent.
Yes, Beauty, the Invisible Embrace, it's called. Yeah.
I don't know if they could be with more time to think about it. I'm sure I could. I'm looking at my library right now. If any titles come to mind, I don't know if it's possible to post them on the school's website or not, but
We can do it. We can post it. We can post it in the newsletter when we send this recording out, if that works.
Yeah, that would work.
Okay, I just want to end this on one last fun note. Okay, if you guys must, I mean, you are hysterical, the two of you, when you get together, and I'm sure it's going to be a load laugh. But I'd like everyone out there to know, if you weren't an artist, what would you be doing, Joe, for a living?
I think I would have been a stonemason.
Oh, what? That is not even close to what I was going to say.
I know. That's
Tell
why
me
you ask these questions. I'll tell you why. My dad was. And I love the idea. I'm very physical. And I was a heavy duty athlete when I was young. And I like the idea of being able to take something and build something, and at the end of the day, see it beautifully done and have it last for a long, long time. To me, there's something so alluring to the combination of those two things, I guess.
How about you, Don?
It's what Joe is saying is very, very elemental. I grew up around it. My father was a brick mason. As we speak, outside my house, my brother Dana is rebuilding my fireplace. So,
well, I don't think you guys went too far from your craft. I think you still are building something wonderful, and that you have lifelong, I think
there is a physical component to, I mean, we're craftsmen. And so there is that component to it. To fully answer your question, I would have liked to have been a full-time sailor, professional sailor on traditional ships, and or a musician. Those are the two things that I would really have.
Okay. Those were I was thinking maybe one of you would have a musician in there. Anyway, I just wanted to say, as we're getting to the end here, we've got a lot of people that are saying, thank you so much, Joe and Don, for your time this morning. Thank you everyone out there who joined John and Joe this morning with us. This webinar was recorded and will be available later this week and posted to our MISA YouTube channel. We encourage you all to consider joining Joe and Don and their 5-day workshop retreat, Surf and Turf, August 18th to the 22nd. You can visit madelineschool.com for more information. And again, Joe and Don, thank you so much for your time today. We wish you the happiest holidays with your family, and we look forward to seeing you both in the new year. Is there anything else you guys wanted to say?
Well, Joe and I coordinated our shirts for a holiday theme. He in the red plaid, me in the green. So
I wasn't going to say it. I wasn't going to.
Well, no, well, actually, it was Don's idea. He thought it would be folksy and approachable. That's what we were going for today.
Thank you, my sweet, folksy, and approachable artist. We really look forward. That's what I'm going to remember you by, Joe. Folksy and approachable.
However it works, that's good. I'll take it.
All right, fellas. Thank you so much.